Together, we are unlocking potential. Welcome to this episode from Red Door Pediatric Therapy, where we share stories and strategies of functional, behavioral, emotional, and social development in children today. We're glad you're here, and we can't wait to get started.
Hey guys, welcome back to Unlocking Potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Schneider. Today, I am joined by one of our beloved occupational therapists, Courtney. Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Steph.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So Courtney is here to talk about potty training. You know, I don't believe that it's common knowledge that occupational therapists are really some of the best, if not the best resource for families, parents, grandparents, whoever is involved in the potty training journey. It's just such an exciting milestone. I think about my kids and thinking about when to start and how I was going to do it and how liberating it is, you know, for the family to be able to not have the diapers and for your pocketbook to not have to buy the diapers. So it's just a fun topic to talk about. And occupational therapists are really great people to be involved in your journey. So let's dive right in. Courtney, I know parents want to know, first off, when can I start?
Yeah. There is kind of an ideal age to start, usually between 18 to 36 months, with most success happening between 20 to 30 months. But that can also be flexible. We want to start at a time that's going to work for your family and that you're going to be motivated and serious about doing it. You want to look for a few readiness skills out of your child, but that's also not totally expected either. We are going to teach our children about pottying. So it's okay if they're not showing a lot of these signs, but we want them to be able to hold their urine for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We want them to be able to sit on the potty upright. We want them to be able to start managing their clothes a little bit more on their own. We want them to be able to kind of tell us whether or not they're wet or soiled. Usually that comes with poop first. They'll kind of tell you like, I'm poopy, please change me, things like that. And then we can kind of start showing them the potty and having them be interested in the potty. But more importantly, it's also important to pick a time that works for your family. When my kid was in this ideal time frame, I was so pregnant and having a baby. So I waited. I didn't want to potty train and then be really busy with a newborn. And I knew that that was going to impact his success in the interim while he was learning. And so I waited and it was fine. So picking a time that works for your family is also really important.
That's such a good point because we're always thinking about our kid and if they're ready. But the other part of that potty training journey is the person who's facilitating. So making sure that you're ready physically and mentally too is important. I love that. So maybe we decide we are ready and our child is ready to start sometime in that range. What's your advice for parents in preparation? How would they prepare to get started potty training?
Yeah, there are so many gadgets and gizmos in the world of pediatrics, and it starts as when they're a baby and it goes into potty training for sure. You don't need a ton. I do recommend that you get a little potty chair that your child can have at the floor to be able to get on and off really easily. And I recommend that for both boys and girls. When you start training your little boy, I would encourage you to have them sit versus stand. So I would recommend a little potty. But beyond that, you don't need a ton. If you're going to start with a more gradual progression, I would start with having pull-ups versus diapers so that the child can be a little bit more independent with dressing. But after that, you don't need a lot of equipment. I would recommend doing some research on what method you're going to use. There's lots of different methods. There's like a 3-day intensive program that you can do. You could do more of a gradual scheduled potty sits kind of approach. And it really just depends on what's going to work best for your family. But start thinking about that and what's going to work best for you and your child so that when you start, you have a good idea and plan in place. And then another thing you can do is start talking to your child, having them watch you go to the potty, even when they're still really young and not ready for potty training. Talk to them about why you're going to the potty. I felt in my belly, I have to go, so that they start to kind of learn some of that language. And then when you're really going to start, talk to your child about what to expect. When I trained my kiddo, I said that there was going to be a diaper fairy, and he was going to take the diapers because there were other kids that needed the diapers. And so you have to go on the potty now. And so kind of making it fun, but also then showing them what you're going to start expecting of them so that they have an idea and they're not surprised when the day comes. Also, too, as you prepare, coordinate with daycare or other caregivers so that if you spend your weekend doing an intensive over the weekend, when you show up to daycare on Monday, they know what they should do to help carry over what you've started.
That's great advice. And in my experience too, daycare providers even comment about they really seem ready to sit on the potty, or they'll even start that process at daycare if they show interest. So it's great to be on the same page there.
Yeah, and they're a great resource. So definitely collaborate with your caregivers, and they probably have some good ideas too on what would work best for your child.
Awesome. Even the language component that you mentioned, I love that crossover. We as moms and dads, I think, get really comfortable really fast talking about pooping and peeing and all of the language that comes along with going to the bathroom. So that's great preparation and advice too. Okay, so we're prepared. We've got our little potty seat. Our child is just so excited to try and sit. So what do we do next? How do we actually do it?
Yes. Yeah. There's a few different methods to go about it. You can do a blend of all of them. You can kind of pick and choose. It's just going to be what works best for your family. A really common one is to do a 3-day intensive, so to speak. So what does that involve? You wake up on a Friday or a Saturday, your child goes nude from the waist down, no underwear, no pants. And that exposure is going to help them to be able to understand that cue of needing to go to the potty. If you're going to do this, what I would recommend is you wake up, you give them a little bit of juice or some exciting liquid, and you pump them full of fluid. That's going to help them be able to know that they have to go better because their bladder is going to be nice and full. And then you play. Be really present with your child that day. Spend time on the floor, maybe on a blanket, just in case accidents. And just remind your child, if you have to go to the potty's over here. Whenever we feel like we need to go, we're going to go on the potty, and just play and be intentional with your child that day. If accidents happen, great. That's okay. It's a great learning opportunity. It almost seems like kids learn quicker when they catch themselves in an accident because they catch that feeling a little bit quicker.
Cool.
But that's how you're going to spend your weekend. You're going to spend a few days at home, nudie, but it helps a lot. Then when they go to daycare on Monday, wear loose clothing. If they're not quite successful yet, try and go without underwear if it's okay. The next step after being fully nude on the bottom is to be able to just go with pants, no underwear. And my kiddo went to daycare. He was at a home daycare, so it was a little bit smaller, but he went without underwear for a full week. And that really helped him be able to figure out that urge awareness.
Wow.
But then they gradually progress to being more comfortable outside of a home, going out to the park or the store, things like that, and figuring out that urge. So that's going to be more of your 3-day intensive method. Well, sometimes families say, I don't have a free weekend from now until forever. When am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to do this? There's lots of other ways you can also potty train. You can do scheduled potty sits. So every 1.5 to 2 hours, it's good to find kind of those markers in terms of like lunch or before nap or before we're going to leave the house, things like that are just in your child's routine that they can become familiar with sitting and trying to go. This one's really good if your child is having difficulty with that urge awareness, or if they're thriving on routine. Then they just know when they're going to be expected to go, and they do really well with that. One tip for this method I would have is to tell your child that it's time to sit versus asking if they have to go. If you ask, that gives them a chance to say no, and then you're stuck.
Which is what they're doing at this age, right? Testing limits and boundaries, and they want control. So I got the option. I'm going to maybe do it the first few times, and then I'm going to say no.
Yep. Just make it part of their routine that this is the time to go potty, and they sit and try and go. But that method works really well too. Other general broad tips are like focusing on success at home before going out and about. So try and pick, a lot of families will pick longer weekends, maybe like a Memorial Day weekend where you have an extra day off, but there's not a lot of things that you have going on that you can spend some time dedicated at home. And the time it takes kind of varies kid to kid. If you do an intensive program and your kiddo was really ready for potty training, they can do really well within, a week's time. They'll probably catch on to it. If you do more of a gradual approach, or if your child is figuring out that urge a little bit more, it might take a little bit longer, but hopefully within like a month or so, for sure, if you are really trying, you'll see some good progress with potty training.
That seems fast. A month seems great.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about the 3-day intensives and, they're having a potty seat probably at that stage, obviously, do you bring the potty seat out to like the space that you're kind of working in, or do you leave that in the bathroom and have them go in there?
Yeah, you can either or. You want it really accessible. So especially if you have like a split level home and you're going to be playing on your main level where your living room is, but the bathroom's upstairs, bring it down. Once they have that urge to go, you want to be able to get to the potty quickly. So that's a great question. Bring it close to them so that it's visible, they're reminded of it, they can get to it quickly, and then they'll be more successful.
Awesome. All right. So things are going good for some families, some kids. I have 3 kids. They all potty train a little bit different. They all take a little bit more time. Let's talk about or move into what happens when things don't go as expected. I think it's pretty easy to get frustrated within the process if it doesn't go as you expect it to go. And I know parents talk, right? They talk about what their kids are doing, and you have kids the same age. And my kid potty trained in this one weekend that we focused on it. Well, I did that same thing, and my kid didn't have the same outcome. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Any advice or comments about when things don't go as expected, or even if you see great progress at first, maybe, and then some regression?
Yeah, it's okay for some kids to take longer, especially if you're starting earlier, which is so fine to do. But then you might see it takes a little bit longer for kids to catch on. Stay persistent. When you read about the 3-day intensive program, it really talks about keeping at the level where they are until they're successful. So if you spend 3 days nude from the waist down and they're still not successful, you should still stay in that phase versus going to the next level. Well, that gets a little tricky, right? We all have jobs and things to get back to after a weekend. But keeping that kind of thought process in mind of, I may need to, spend the next weekend doing this level again, or trying to send my kiddo in just pants and not underwear this week to kind of continue on the same level where we are. A lot of times too, we will see where we did great for a week, and now what? We're regressing, and this is frustrating. I encourage parents to kind of look at how they've changed, because as kiddos get more successful, we back off and we get kids more autonomy, which is good and great. That's what we hope. But they might still just need a little bit more support yet. We might still need to increase our reminders. We might need to be more intentional about our reminders. One of the books that I read talked a lot about not just always asking, do you have to go, but being mindful about when's the last time they went, is there a chance that they need to go, and only reminding when we feel like they actually do need to go, so that it doesn't become like a nagging thing for the child of my parent is always asking me. So kind of going back to maybe we need to go take a step back, do a few more scheduled potty sits versus that autonomy that the child is gaining. You can also increase fluids so that the child can still have that urge awareness. When we initially start, we pump them full with fluids. They have lots of urine and it's going well. And then we go back to our usual intake, and that urge just isn't as strong for the child. And two, if you start to notice some holding with stool, that is very, very common. They're being rewarded for being dry. That's kind of what we're wanting, but then they're going to start holding poop. So it's okay, but stay on top of it. It's focus on urine first.
Okay.
And let them get successful there, and just watch for constipation. They're going to start getting into patterns where they maybe went and had a bowel movement 3 times in their diaper throughout the day. And now they're learning to hold, and they're kind of reducing that time that they go in terms of frequency. And that's good, right? We all kind of learn to compact it into one potty sit, but just watch for constipation. And you may need to add like a little stool softener just so that when the child does sit, they can feel more successful. They're not as worried about it hurting. It's just different to poop on the potty than in your pull-up. And so
absolutely,
it's going to be a new skill, and it's going to take some time. So what's really common is a child will start to go in their pull-up at nap time or right after they go to bed. So they're relaxed, they're back to their comfy pull-up, and it's okay. Let it go for a little while, encourage them, remind them what's expected. Spend 1 time a day sitting a little extra on the potty so that they can really try and poop, but it will come. Keep it soft, keep them comfortable, and the stools usually will come a little bit later.
That's great that you mentioned that, because like you said, it is really common. It's just bringing back all of these memories. My kids are 10, 7, and 6. So I'm out of that life right now, but I remember it. And you talking about all those details just bring up the differences and what we experienced. My middle child was like that. She could hold all day. When she first started training, she trained really fast, but she would hold it like all day at daycare. Like she would go in the morning and come home and just have this long, like she didn't go all day. And it's like, it's just all these unexpected things that you never thought would happen during your potty training journey. And you're like, well, now what do I do? How do I make her, all the things.
Yes. Yeah.
I wanted to ask another question. You talk about like the number 2s being different. What about nighttime? If your child trains and is accident free or great during the day, still diapering at night. Talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, as far as bedwetting is typical, not a medical concern until age 7. Okay. Now, it's also common for kids to become fully dry at night about 1 year post potty training. Okay. So usually between like 4 to 7 years old is when we start to see dryness at night. And that will kind of be a whole different ballgame in terms of like the things that you can do to help promote that, like decreasing fluids at night, for example, things like that. But when you're starting potty training, don't worry about it as much. Some philosophies say, yes, do it all at once, and woof, that's overwhelming for a parent. So, feel free to keep pull-ups and diapers at night and for nap time and things like that. And that can be tackled a little bit later.
Okay. Or just kind of happens naturally.
Yes.
Being dry in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. It happens naturally. We usually see it a little bit later for boys than girls.
Okay.
But yeah, by around age 7, usually kiddos have grown out of it.
Okay, awesome. And we're such a society of water bottle toting people, right? Like all of our kids go to bed with their water bottles by their bed, and sometimes they don't drink a lot during the day and they chug kind of right before they go to sleep.
Yeah.
So sometimes they do fill up and then they go during the night. So,
yeah.
Okay. Very good. My final question here today is, obviously occupational therapists work with kids who are maybe struggling in this area. So, and even with some natural, regression or some unexpected things during the potty training journey, when would it be time to get some help from an occupational therapist? When is it, feel right for a parent to come in, maybe do an evaluation and see if actually some therapy would be warranted?
Yeah, if you've been trying for 6 weeks plus, definitely give us a call. We can help problem solve through if it's getting into that, month and a half, 2 months time frame where you're like, we have really tried and we're just out of progress. If your child's getting older outside of that ideal age range and you're not seeing a lot of interest in the potty, maybe a lot of like aversions or resistance or fear around the potty, that would be a great time to reach out. If you're noticing a lot of sensory difficulties around the potty, they don't like how it feels to sit. They don't like the fan in the bathroom. They're just really upset about the bathroom environment. That can be a great time to reach out to us. Also too, if you're noticing a lot of UTIs that are just really frequent, if your child is urinating every 20 minutes, then they're just, you can't get that window of time to be closer to an hour and a half. It just feels like they're going and going. They're just like a leaky faucet. That would be a good time to come see us. If you were successful for a while and you're seeing a significant regression, a lot of times we will see kiddos who potty trained at 3, they're doing really well, even for like a year's worth of time, and they get to 4, and then they start to see some increase in constipation, and then that'll lead to even some pee leaks or stool leaks. That would be a great time to come see us if your child was really successful and all of a sudden is having a pretty significant regression. And also if you're noticing lasting constipation, if you potty trained and you gave it a few weeks to let the poop kind of settle in terms of being able to go on the potty, and they're still holding, they're still having really hard stools, they're fearful because it's going to hurt, things like that, definitely come see us. We can help manage that constipation and some of the underlying difficulties that may be causing that for them.
Awesome. Such great information that you shared today, Courtney. Thank you so much for being here. I wish I would have had this opportunity to talk to you before my kids started the journey. It's just so good to have that reassurance and even just someone to talk to about it. And even if you come in for an evaluation, we don't always recommend therapy, if you don't qualify or we don't think you're at a point where therapy is warranted, we'll send you home with some tips and tricks and maybe check in a little bit later. But we're always around to meet with you, chat with you, and kind of give you a baseline of where you're at and see if we could help or not. So really awesome information. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah. It's intimidating for parents to start this process, but it's also, like you said, it's so exciting and it gives you a whole bunch of freedom beyond that. And especially as a child too, it helps them grow in confidence. So it's nice to have a little bit of some tips and tricks available so that you are able to tackle it with confidence.
Absolutely. Okay, that'll do it for us today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for unlocking potential with us. And a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Unlocking Potential is a production of Red Door Pediatric Therapy with clinics in Fargo, Bismarck, Grand Forks, Minot, and Beulah. Learn more and book your free screening at reddoorpediatric.com.